I didn't want to do this because I consider foreign detective Bert Stellander and myself on the same team against Kate and Jerry McCann, who are trying to deceive everyone. However, some of the things he said here do give me some pause. So, in the interest of full disclosure, I'm just going to go through them before we keep listening. And then 8 months ago, I speculated what would happen if someone tailed the McCanns on their annual trip to Playa de Luge. I even proposed setting up a well search just to see how the McCanns would react. Apparently, foreign detective Bert Stellander had the same idea and claims it even revealed Madeleine McCann's burial site. Today, let's watch his interview with James English to determine if he's just another conspiracy theorist or if he's actually onto something. I've not listened to this yet. I wanted to do that with all of you, so let's go ahead and listen.
And boom, we're on. And today's guest, we've got Bernt Stellander. Bernt, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming all the way over.
Well, that invitation is not something you say no to.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Your book, The Sudden Impulse, about the Madeleine McCann case, you dive right into a lot of territory that people don't. I think you've been pretty fair also, and I think it's important to understand there is a lot out there about this case. This child is, well, not a child anymore, but then it's probably the biggest missing person in the world ever. It has been for the last, 17 years now? What was it, 3rd of May 2007? In your book, which we'll get into, you think it was the 2nd, and dates change, and you kind of contradict and look into the contradictions of the statements. There's a lot out there about this case. It's very, still a lot of question marks unanswered. I think their interviews, what they've gave, didn't do them any justice, but it doesn't mean they're not. That doesn't mean they're guilty either of any misdoing. And
off the bat, I'm happy to see that Bert is basing his analysis on the parents' statements and their interviews, because that's what I've done over the course of my 22 videos analyzing the McCanns. And I've linked my entire playlist in the description below. That said, I'm not sure if Bert and I are going to agree on everything, so I'm curious to see what the nitty-gritty of his theory is. A, because of the title of his book, The Sudden Impulse. If that's how he thinks Madeleine was killed, I think we're going to slightly disagree on that. Personally, I think it was an accident. I think Kate administered a sedative that they administered to her every night because she was loud. And on this particular occasion, perhaps because she had heat stroke because she'd been out in the sun all day, or simply just because it wasn't part of her normal routine, it hit her differently and she ended up dying. And then the parents, as doctors, had to make a tough decision in an extreme situation. Do we call the police and potentially get found out for being negligent in the way we administered sedative to her? Or do we hide her in order to keep our medical licenses and our other 2 children? They had a pair of twins. And I think they did what I also think the Ramseys did, was decide to stage a kidnapping in order to keep the rest of their family unit together, and they've had to lie ever since.
But yeah, people are still very interested in this topic. But first and foremost, how are you?
I'm very good. This is very exciting, of course. I'm not a person that seeks attention in something. I'd rather be invisible on an island, Madeira, for example. But there comes a point in time where you actually get onto something that is worth writing about, especially because it's a big case for many people. There's a lot of people that hope before they die, they get to know what happened to Maddie. And for me, it was opportunity and time, because I moved to southern Portugal December 2016. And the only knowledge I had about the case was there started to pop up forums on the internet and Facebook pages. So I had some knowledge about the forensics and the police files. And I was not active on any of these forums and social media. And I think it's a good thing, because I started off with blank sheets 10 years in. So this was right before the 10th anniversary. And it's a strange thing, but I lived almost 6 months in the Algarve before I took a look. I was a little bored, and I went to look at the town.
Counterintuitively, I count this as a point in Bert's favor, that he didn't have an agenda when he went into this case, he had not been involved in it from day one, and that he went into it with a fresh mind, with a blank slate. And this is something I spoke about in my video, How to Avoid Confirmation Bias, 6 months ago, where the more exposed you were to the press about the McCann case, one way or the other, the more likely you were to see them as these villainous murderers who killed their daughter as part of some cult with red shoes and the Illuminati, or you did the opposite and saw them as these pair of lovable, innocent parents who are being attacked and did nothing wrong, and they're the victims of a kidnapping, and everyone should be rallying around them. And my opinion is the truth is somewhere in the middle. They don't appear to be psychopaths. They seem to be parents who did something reckless by administering a sedative to their daughter that they probably shouldn't have, and she died. And then their real original sin was to hide the body and lie to the police. And then it's snowballed ever since then. For example, the fact that they raise money, if they know for a fact their daughter was not kidnapped, is inexcusable. And I've spoken about that in my videos, How to Spot a Grift and How to Spot a Charity Scam. Those videos are particularly risky to make because they do explain how the McCann money machine works, why they are so litigious. In order to keep their fund going, they have to sue people like me, or Bert, or Pat Brown, or Peter Hyatt, or Sonia Polton. Even if I don't end up agreeing with Bert on all the points he's making, I do credit him for going into a fresh mind and for even talking about it at all.
Actually, I showed my daughter it on March 1, 2017. And then 17 days later, 18th of March, 2017, I went to town and I walked around and I was very curious about taking things in, you know. And then I went up on the hillside and then I remembered Kate's turning point dream, the alleged dream that she called to Paiva, the liaison, when Jerry was in Washington, D.C., about Maddie being hidden on a hillside overlooking a beach in Praia da Luz. And I thought, hey, what is this? Are you trying to, have the police find her? And then Jerry's response when he came back, he was in court in Lisbon, then he was alone on camera. And he said, it's not true that Kate had a dream that she was buried somewhere. He used that word. And then I thought, wow, he's kind of confirming that hillside might be very interesting. And I went up that hillside and I had this revelation about their jogging. It was made fun of them. You're a sportsman, how it's important to work out and you want to do that. But when you lose a child, you can't eat, you can't sleep, and you definitely can't play tennis or go for a jog. That's just my opinion. But the point was that they were jogging on the hillside and they made sure that everybody knew by that photo. They had a photo shoot, I think on May 19th, 7 a.m. in the morning, where you see the backdrop, you see the church, so everybody knows where they're jogging. And then I thought, this is brilliant. If they hid her there, in the future, they could always go back and nobody would suspect anything why they were there. And then something peculiar was written by Jerry on the blog, his blog. He talked about the jog from apartment 5A, where they ran to the top of the hillside, to the landmark, and he called it a 19 minutes and they didn't stop. And then I thought, well, that's peculiar. Nobody cares how much time it takes to run there.
Bert might be onto something here. Whenever someone tells you something didn't happen unprompted, you have to ask yourself, why did they feel the need to persuade me of that fact? Jerry said it took 19 minutes, and then he added that was without stopping, which obviously makes me wonder, why did he feel the need to say that if he didn't actually stop? And then I think I see Bert's thought process here. If he did stop, why did he stop? Where did he stop? Could that possibly be where Maddie is buried? Which I like. I like that form of thinking. Personally, if you followed my series, you'll know that I think the McCanns accidentally killed Madeleine and then they hid her in a well. And one of the ways we came up with the well theory together on the channel and in the DD forum is through the McCann's leakage. Leakage is such an important concept in statement analysis that's actually a card in my deception deck, my 52 favorite rules for spotting lies and manipulation. And basically, the premise is that liars can unintentionally reveal the truth through their choice of words. And that's because it's challenging to suppress real memories while telling falsehoods. In other words, your memory is stronger than your imagination. So sometimes when you're trying to lie to someone based on something you imagined, some of the truth from your memory slips through, even if it's just in the phrases you use or a particular word that you use. A final caveat to that is that leakage is cumulative. You need lots of examples of it in order to make any firm opinions based on it. In our case, we've been tracking all the nautical references the McCanns make whenever they speak about Madeleine, and there are quite a few. So after watching this video, I recommend watching my entire Madeleine McCann series, and if you watch it in order, you'll be able to see how we just picked up one or two words here and there, and then developed an entire theory based on signs of deception and signs of leakage. Of course, we still do have lingering questions like when precisely would Madeleine have died, even if the mode of death we have is correct. And hopefully Bert can plug in those gaps.
And then I actually wanted to check for myself. I was kind of bad shape, overweight, but I did it in less than 12 minutes. So I thought that was strange, because they would beat me on anything past a half a mile. And I was walking on the steep parts, but they are runners, And so there was something about that hillside that really stuck out. So I decided to do a methodical survey on the hill. Where would I do it, given I was jogging there or playing golf? And this fits also, this hillside theory, with Mark Harrison, the former Scotland Yard superstar. He was there for a week with Mr. Amaral, the first detective. And I think maybe his job was to figure out where would somebody hide something in the area. And that was between the golf course on top of that cliff and the town. So, and then you had the South African there with the device, and he also marked that area. So, but I started with clean sheets, and I found some certain areas there that could be plausible. And I had a really extreme approach, really, because I was looking for a grave. And this has to do with profiling of a mother losing a child, and especially if potentially there is SA involved, and whether she knew or not, but what could she do after the child has passed is maybe giving her a more beautiful grave than we could dream of. That was my insane approach. And when you have a spot or a grave on that hillside, and a mother returning so many times per year alone, I thought that it would be plausible to think that she would romanticize this in a way by placing symbols there. So I was looking for very subtle symbols there, like a heart, pink flowers, the letter M. And the weird thing was that in this area too, I found all of the above, and then I put up a camera there, and then boom, here comes Jerry McCann past. What are the chances?
What we were planning to do over here was set up some sort of well search with fundraising, even if not a single dollar was raised, just to see how the McCanns would react. Because no matter what they did, it would be revealing. If they contributed to the well search with all the funds from their charity, it might suggest that they are innocent. After all, we are volunteering to go out there to search wells for their daughter. But if I were to bet on it, I've always said that they would try to shut it down, or discredit me, or call me a scammer. And that's because I think they're guilty. We never went about doing it, but I'm glad to see that Bert set up some sort of trail cam where he thinks Madeleine was buried. And I also wonder, is there a well on that hill, or a crevasse, or some sort of cave? Because all the leakage we've seen suggests something cold, dark, and deep.
So I had tried to get in contact with Amaral for about 8 months before that. But after I had this camera, this recording of this person walking past this spot one, I call it, with the symbols, I knew that I could go solo and do this on my own by starting a cat and mouse game with anonymous emails to them, not about where, but that it might have been discovered, just to create some stormy waters and sleepless nights, to have them come back and narrow down the area. So I put up several cameras there, and eventually a friend of his showed up. So, and after that, I have both of them showing up, and I waited a week. I tried to have actually him come and remove the remains, but they didn't. But they showed up later, and I have some recordings there that are very interesting. Yeah,
Was that the start of it all for you?
that was the start of all. And my idea was that there would never be a book unless I had a find, and it's dangerous to program yourself telling yourself something, because it becomes like concrete, but then friends of mine told me about that this story is something you have to tell. I mean, even if you make it like a fiction or something. But and I was going to move to Spain, and I even considered Italy, but then I actually, very strangely, 2 days later, I bought an apartment in Praia de Luz.
I didn't want to do this because I consider foreign detective Bernt Stellander and myself on the same team against Kate and Jerry McCann, who are trying to deceive everyone. However, some of the things he said here do give me some pause. So in the interest of full disclosure, I'm just going to go through them before we keep listening, and then we'll give him the benefit of the doubt. The first is how vague he was about the people who showed up to Site 1 on camera. If you've followed my channel for a while, you'll know that vagueness is a way for people to avoid giving details, whether it's incriminating details or just details that could be fact-checked and found to be false. So when he said this person was caught on camera, I would prefer if he had said a name. Or when he said a friend of his, I'd prefer that person's name, or at least for Bert to say a friend of Jerry McCann, or a friend of Kate McCann, or a friend of that friend, right? It's vague who this friend is. Similarly, it's vague when he says both of them showed up. Who's both of them? Is that Kate and Jerry McCann? Or is it this friend and their friend? It's unclear, and that's no bueno. If you have Kate and Jerry McCann showing up to where you think Madeleine is buried, I would expect you to say that directly. There's no reason not to. I also didn't like how he said this is a cat and mouse game. A cat and mouse game implies that there's no ending, that nothing will actually be found, and that nothing has been found yet. I also don't like how he called the recording interesting. Once again, that's a vague word. An interesting video could be anything. If he had them on camera looking for a body or digging it up or dropping trinkets next to a headstone, that would be incriminating. That would be a much better, more definitive word. I don't like how he said that his book was contingent on making a find, because that sets up the wrong motivations. If you're not going to publish years of work unless you find a body, well, then you are incentivized to make up a body if you can't find one, or interpret something that's very dubious as a body, even if you're not doing it deliberately, because you want to have the find so you can publish your book. That's one reason on my channel I've never made any of the cases I cover contingent on getting a final answer. We are just pursuing the truth wherever it takes us, and we're practicing spotting liars. Finally, I don't like how he said, well, I'll publish the book even if it's fiction, and that the fact that he called it a story. This all implies that what he's saying might not necessarily be true. He's given himself that out. Well, you interpret it as truth, but to me it's just fiction. Typically, when we're talking about made up things, we call them stories. When someone's publishing something about an investigation, I would expect them to call it an investigation. For example, even on my own Madeleine McCann compilation video, I called it an investigation, not a story, because to me, that's what it was. I was investigating the truth. I wasn't fabricating stories. Of course, I don't think Bert is a native English speaker, so we have to give him that benefit of the doubt. And he might just be calling this fiction or a story in order to protect himself from the McCanns, who are extremely litigious. So just know that if you picked up on things that made you feel uneasy, they've not been lost on me either. I'm just not in the habit of trying to take down other truth seekers.
Didn't want to be that crazy guy, going and digging and stuff. Even though the police, the PJ, Policia Judiciaria, the criminal police, they actually said it would be easier if you went and checked. So I started a little check digging, and this is what I saw some reaction to that, and on the video by Jerry, and I thought I could play on that, and that's why I started this game of trying to narrow it down and get some reactions. And so it's very strange for me, because if she wasn't there, they didn't put her there, why would they come? Why would they react? They would tell Operation Grange, Scotland Yard, and they would tell Policia Judiciaria, and then they would tell me, did you send more emails, And so that didn't happen. And instead they sent friends, probably because of fear of maybe being trapped, because I confused them with those emails, I can tell you that.
So the emails, did you message Jerry?
Yeah, well, he showed up. I put a camera where I had the symbols, and after he noticed something had been done there, basically me test drilling, and the police didn't want to meet me. So I thought, what would I do? And then I suggested to my lawyer, say, hey, maybe I should send some emails and try to trick him to come and dig up the body.
I just wanted to point out that he said that he put the symbols there, not the McCanns. So he put symbols there, and then he enticed Jerry to come to gauge Jerry's reaction. Not sure if earlier, I'd have to go back and listen, he said that the symbols and the trinkets and the letter M were placed by the McCanns. And if that's the case, then this isn't looking good. Regarding his technique of emailing them anonymously, I actually like that a lot, if that's what he did. In fact, that is an FBI technique in order to get suspects to trip themselves up. So as long as he's confident that he thinks the parents are guilty, the same way I think they are, I wouldn't even hold it against him if he called them in the middle of the night and said, you know what you did to me. I'm still here. As far as I'm concerned, getting to the truth could be worth that. I would never do it. I would never expect any of my subscribers to do it, but I don't actually hold that against him. People go about getting to the truth different ways. And as you know, my channel is not about actually solving true crimes. It's just about teaching my subscribers how to spot liars and manipulators, and the best way to do that is using examples from true crime, current events, headlines, celebrities, etc.
In the remains. So I did. And the first email was basically just read carefully. It was kind of cryptic, but it was, as you noticed, it's about to be discovered. We can delay them a week, and that's it. And then I was hoping he would panic and come and try to remove it. And I waited for him in the bush for a week, in the night, in the dark, with the whole shabam, night vision, different gear.
Did Jerry show up at night time?
No, he didn't. But they did show up 2 weeks later. He and Kate.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Also, you've sent Jerry McCann an email to say it's about to be discovered.
Yeah.
And
Because I had to play on that.
And he showed up to the spot where you think Madeleine's buried.
Yeah. And after that, when they showed up, I had to put up more cameras because I saw they had interest higher up. They were rushing by spot one. And then I had to, try to narrow down the area because I knew she was in the area. Even in the presentation to the PJ, I said that if she's not at spot one, it had become a memorial. Maybe it was their first choice, Kate's choice, when she was running on the hill with her crumbled photo of Maddie in her hands, and she felt relieved when she got back home. She had found the spot. That's my interpretation of that in her diary and book. So it kept going with this game, and it succeeded because, of course, I scared them off, and who wouldn't be scared? But they sent friends. And I think the first, Mr. Nugget, I call him, his behavior was very strange, bizarre, but not when you understand that he might have been under the instruction by Jerry to, under a white lie, that the PJ is doing something there. Could you please check? Make sure nobody sees you. That's exactly how he behaves in my interpretation. But then a few months later, his wife shows up higher up And that's when things turn, because she obviously looks like she's in the know, and they shouldn't be there. It's too close to the final spots. So it's very interesting. And yeah, that's where I cut you off earlier, because I said that I didn't want to number how many videos I had.
I'm going to be frank with all of you. This is concerning me now. The vagueness, the nicknames, the final spot, it's all too vague for me to put my own reputation behind it. I'm going to continue giving him the benefit of the doubt. I don't know if these videos are available anywhere, but if the videos are not available and there's no proof of what he's saying, that does concern me, because years of work to get photos of Kate and Jerry at somewhere where you called your shot, where you said this is where she must be buried, and they show up there, I would expect him to at least have sold that to the tabloids, if not make his own YouTube channel about it or post it on his own social media accounts.
Because, of course, this is a sort of a game of pressure. And of course, I want them to crack to avoid creating problems for the Nuggets, which seem like nice people. The way they treated their dog, very nice. And they are not involved in any way or shape or form or what happened back then. But they are involved by having gone to check for the McCanns. And that's their problem. That's my trump card. And I'm going to play my cards slowly making moves. The media doesn't want to play, but I just want people to read the way I put it together of why it happened the night before and how I can prove that there was no abduction. And that ends it all, right?
How does he know the Nuggets weren't involved? Who are the Nuggets? How does he know they weren't at least involved in helping the McCanns fabricate their story or write their book? Some of the things he's saying are too conclusive for me. Also, he almost just slipped up and said, all I want people to do is read my book. He didn't say it in so few words, but that was the takeaway. And I don't begrudge him selling his book. As you know, I have the deception deck. I think people should be making money for value they provide. But he started off this interview saying that he didn't care about fame or money. But now he's basically saying that these nuggets are the reason you should read the book. I think I have some more to say about it, but I don't want to be too critical. We've only watched 13 minutes and 45 seconds of this. And like I said, I'm not here to tear down someone else who's trying to pursue the same thing I am. I think lots of what he's done here is very outside the box thinking, very creative. I would just prefer if you were more upfront with the proof.
It's not about taking them down, it's taking the lie down. And that's what I'm all in for.
The whole thing is messy. Seeing their interviews on the TV just doesn't look right. Now, I've interviewed many people who have lost kids, loved ones, and they're still distraught 10, 15, 20 years later when they speak about it. People who have got kids missing, their face, they just look distraught. Now, it doesn't mean everybody reacts the same, so we've got to stay open-minded to that. And plus, they're doctors, maybe they've seen a lot of cold stuff, but they just seem it always seemed as if they were justifying for me. Now, I'm not a detective, and I could be wrong, and if I ever do get it wrong and they weren't involved, I'll be the first to apologise as well. But just the interviews that they've done, the dates, the kind of, first of all, leaving your kids at 2 years old, twins, and 3 years old is neglect anyway. They should never have done that. They're babies. They're not kids at 12 and 13. The friends that they were with, and then out jogging and playing tennis 2 or 3 days later, washing the daughter's teddy bear. The dogs have sniffed blood in the room. They've sniffed out the dead body in their car, I think 20 odd days later. It seems, and I've got to be honest, I feel as if they know a lot more. And there seems a bit of a cover-up. I know the Portuguese police, they were suspects also for Madeleine's disappearance at the start. Is that correct?
They were the whole time and still are.
Yeah. So, first of all, your book, The Sudden Impulse, this photo here, is this where you believe Madeleine is hidden?
It's actually the area there on the hillside. So it's
And where can people buy your book?
Well, they are in Portugal. You can buy it off the website. If you go on foreigndetective.com or thesuddenimpulse.com, you will find a link to WOC in Portugal.
Okay.
but it will be a digital version very soon.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm not prepared.
That's okay. That's perfect. We can leave the link for people to check this book out. It is a long read, but there's so much information in it. It's important to read and listen, make up your own mind. But before we get into everything, I always like to go back to the start with my guest, Bert. Just kind of where you grew up and how it all began.
Yeah, well, I was born in Austria when my father from northern Norway studied medicine there, and he met my mother in Austria at the university. When I was 2.5 years old, we moved to northern Norway, land of the midnight sun above the Arctic, and did the normal stuff. And then the army, we have mandatory duty. I did 12 months in the army military police. And after that, we apply for UN forces. It's very popular. So I did a tour there as a military police as well. And been a foreign exchange student in St. Louis a year after that. Several colleges, different engineering, optometry, business school. I hurt my neck playing football, like you did.
What position did you play?
Left wing in 4-3-3 or a striker at 4-4-2.
You must be about, what, 6'2", 6'3"? Height?
6'1", not
6'1".
Yeah. But I had a rocket of a left leg that could have reached far. But I hurt my neck, and I had to retrain from optometry.
Since there is a little break in the action here, I just want to say that I have linked James' full podcast below. Hopefully he's okay with us reacting to it. I recommend subscribing to his channel. I just did. And potentially, once Bernt Stellander's book is available on Kindle, maybe I'll pick it up and give it a read. I'm currently reading Madeleine by Kate McCann. If you want me to do a video about that, let me know in the comments below.
Optometry to the business school, and then I had this, I was sitting with a coin, and I had this funny idea about alignment system for putters. So I patented the first alignment system for putters, and then, a few years later, had a whole brand and everything. I was just going to sell the idea. And even TaylorMade Adidas Golf wanted to buy it all, but I was loyal to my friends. An idiot, you would say. Loyalty is, you shouldn't put a price on that, right?
Yeah.
But it's coincidences, which I don't believe in. So I'm actually glad it didn't happen. Being in San Diego working for TaylorMade Adidas Golf would be okay, but I'd rather be in Portugal and do this. And not just because of the excitement, it's just because it has meaning and it's important. And it's a good feeling to crack a code. And of course, that was the problem for the Portuguese police. That was the timeline, because they couldn't convince the state attorneys to prosecute based on the evidence they had. The cadaver scent, the cadaver dogs, the blood found in the rental car, over 3 weeks later, because they didn't think they could conspire and agree on the statements in such a short time and clean the apartment in that time. And that also became a guideline for me in terms of my big discovery. Of course, if we find her there at my findings in my area, at the spots, that would be, of course, insane. But for me, it's more important about the timeline, because it changes everything, and it's revealed by the evidence and by their words. They're guiding me to the night before in so many ways. And it wasn't like me wanting to try to fit that timeline. It was just being aware of statement and statement analysis. And when you have Kate talking about the night before as the night of all nights, you should maybe start to take a closer look, right? If you have a mother who lost her child being abducted the next night, why would you call the day before the night of all nights? And she talked about the unprecedented move that she loathed even to mention, that she slept in that bedroom the night before. Okay. So, but she felt she needed to put that on record, because there had to be someone that having slept on that bed by the window, because they knew that if there was an abductor going in or out that window, they would have to step on that bed. So somebody had to mess that up. But she slept there for a different reason, of course. It was to take care of the twins when the chaos erupted after the accident the night before. For me, it started with, I wanted to find her if she was on the hill, and I was convinced she was on the hill. Okay.
I think he's about to get into his theory about the timeline, That and why the British government were so adamant about protecting the McCanns are the two big puzzle pieces left open in this case.
Started to read the statements really thoroughly, and then things start to pop out, and everything made sense once you once I discovered the timeline. And of course they had some mistakes when they speak on video and everything, but also in their written statements it's a multiple angle pointing to this timeline that I discovered. There has been suggestions of earlier that week, which makes sense because of that last photo that put the police totally in the tunnel in terms of tunnel vision, because that last photo was taken most likely on the Sunday before, and they said it was taken on Thursday. So then everything changes, the whole game. But there was a lot of these photos that they had on cameras. They were blackened and messed with, and they were in the hands of the McCanns and the team McCann up to 3 weeks, especially this last photo. It wasn't even delivered with the other photos, so it wouldn't have any value in court anyways as an evidence. And the metadata on the digital photo stamp was also updated twice, so it's been messed with. It could be any date. So that just opened up the book in terms of finding. But if you had more time, there would be less mistakes. But there was a crying incident, a big one, that Mrs. Fenn upstairs from there, an 80-year-old lady, she heard a child cry, not a toddler, and so she thought it was Madeleine. It cried 75 minutes on the Tuesday. That's May 1st. And of course, this famous comment by Maddie that they said, why didn't you come when we cried last night? That points to that being on the 2nd of May, right? But they used it, the McCanns said it was on the morning of the 3rd to make us believe that she was alive on the 3rd. But when Jerry then says that she only cried one night, then it all falls apart. Then of course, that comment, if it ever was made by Maddie, was on the morning before, on the May 2nd. So,
So see Kate and Jerry, is there any background reports on them before this with their kids or neglect or anything?
This is also the big question that I don't dig too deep into, speculations and theories about why the cover-up of this, because Jerry McCann, there is a CATS file, 19039 something.
Regarding the reason for the cover up, I think it's as simple as parents being in an extreme situation, a fight or flight situation, and deciding, hey, it's not worth risking sedatives being found in our daughter's body because those sedatives likely contributed to her death, and we could be found guilty of neglect or negligence or medical malpractice or recklessness. Remember, these are two physicians. They are held to a higher standard than someone else who might have just given their kid Calpol without knowing how drowsy it would make them. And they don't even have to have had given her more sedative than they normally gave her. As I've pointed out in other videos, the same medications and the same doses can hit you a lot stronger when different variables change. For example, you're in somewhere that's not your home, or you're more tired than you usually are, or you take it later than you usually do back in the UK, or you're just more dehydrated. Remember, Madeleine was 3 years old. She was a toddler. She had allegedly been out on a boat on the water all day, in the sun, sweating, potentially getting heat stroke, and then takes a sedative in the evening. At least that's my theory. I also think that Kate is the one who administered the sedative, which I've discussed in other videos. Because whenever they're talking about that night, they say we, they speak as a unit, but Kate always switches to I when she talks about regretting a decision that was made. And I think that's because she's the one who administered the sedatives. Regarding Bert's timeline, saying that Madeleine died before, lots of people seem to have that theory. I personally don't think it's necessary. You'd be surprised how creative people can be when they're in an extreme situation. When it's life or death, people do things that you can't even imagine to protect themselves. So I don't think the point that people make about, well, there's not enough time between Kate going up there and her running down to the Tapas bar, it's just not persuasive to me. They could have stashed the body somewhere and moved it later.
News file, but there's nothing on it. It's just on his name. I think actually it's on both parents' names, this CAT file. So if you think about why would somebody help these families, well, you could say there are many doctor families, upper middle class, they're abroad, and somebody knows Gordon Brown's brother or in the neighborhood or something, and he's on his way up. And of course, anybody would help, right? But the big question is why the Gold Steering Group was established, I think only 8 days after this.
And what's that?
It's like an emergency group set up by the government to control things. And I think that's part of why Clarence Mitchell, the spokesperson, was sent down there to control what comes out in the media. That's his words. Well, if there's a file on somebody and you have 4 families and they suspect possible SA within that group, maybe it's worth protecting something. I don't know. Embarrassment. I don't know. I don't dwell into those things. But 12 days after this, I think the 15th or 16th of May, Dr. Catherine Gaspar and her husband went to Leicestershire Police and gave a statement. And this is the big one that points to the SA, because it would be easier for her to let it go away, but they actually stepped up to the police, and they had been on holiday 2 years prior in 2005 in Mallorca with them. And then she had, Catherine Gaspar, she had witnessed David, Payne, and Jerry talk about Maddie in a sexual manner, that she likes this, and doing certain gestures. And it happened twice. So her husband also noticed these things, but he didn't catch it that it was about Madeleine. But that's not the point. The point is you have somebody actually taking that risk, going to the police and giving that statement, but it was kept from the investigation, this insinuation of SA, which gives a better image of why would they help them out of this trouble. So somebody knew something was going on.
You talking a paedophile ring?
I don't talk about ring. It could be just, inter-friends, Yeah, we're talking about the P thing, of course.
So we go right back. So what date did Kate and Jerry arrive in Portugal?
Oh, they were on April 28th.
And they were only supposed to be there for 1 week holiday.
Yeah.
And their friends, 7 friends, 3 couples and 1 mother.
Before they move on, that Gaspar statement is something I've heard about on X and in my comments, but I've never actually seen the video or the transcript. I would have to analyze the statement for its veracity, and maybe that's something, since they're getting into new information, I want to be fresh and I want to lock in. So let's wrap up this video here. If you want me to continue this series, continue analyzing this particular interview, let's get this video to 50,000 views. If you want to see my 8-hour investigation of the McCanns, click the video on your screen now. You can also become a channel member to vote on who we will analyze next. Until next time, stay true.